starting to see more and more focus go on in terms of biology of autism. It's also important to look at the diagnosis side of it, and how do we know who has it, and what is the epidemiology around that, what are the phenotypes, meaning what are the different ways in which it manifests. There's a saying that once you've seen a child with autism, you've seen one child with autism, and you know about the heterogeneity. And it's important, obviously, as I've talked about before, that we identify those people that have autism as early as possible. And the last area is treatment, and how do we make it better? And we need to look at the biomedical and the biological, behavioral and technological aspects that we can use to make the condition better. The other thing I'd like to address is just this research framework. And so much of what we've spent the last 20 years on is really discovery, and that is doing the research that helps us understand the disorder better. But once we know what the disorder is, we then need to start moving into a development phase, and that is developing interventions and ways in which we can make the condition better. And then ultimately, we need to be able to disseminate that information. And so today, roughly 80% of our funding goes into the discovery side of things, and there's another maybe 10 or 15% in development. And then there's also some monies that are going into dissemination. But I think what you will find in the coming years is that as we understand the disorder better, you're going to see more developments, more money and funding going into developing ways to intervene and to make the condition better, and then ultimately we'll be able to disseminate that into the field so that we all can benefit from that. So I'm now going to shift over to what's happening on the public front, and that is what's happening in terms of, and again, I apologize, it's a little bit U.S.-centric, but hopefully this will be information that will be applicable and you can help apply here in Canada. And so I'm going to shift over to what's happening at the federal government level. So I mentioned before that there was a piece of legislation that President George Bush signed in at the end of 2006, in December 2006, called the Combating Autism Act. And as I said before, it was about $1 billion over a 5-year period that was going to be put into research. One of the things that that act did is that it created what's known as the IACC, which is the Interactive Autism or Agency Coordinating Committee. And it's basically a group of different agencies within the Division of Health and Human Sciences. And they get together quite frequently now, and they're responsible for coordinating all the autism activities within the U.S. government system. And one of the things they were responsible for doing was creating a strategic plan for how the money that was raised through the Combating Autism Act would actually get spent. So that began in November of 2007. They created a draft of the strategic plan about 8 or 9 months later. That was presented in August. Another group got together and said, this is how much it's going to cost, and this is our recommendations in terms of prioritization. And then finally, that got approved by the IACC just about a month ago in January of 2009. I don't know if any of the news and information about this filtered over in north of the border. It was wrought with a lot of drama, and there was kind of some things that happened at the end, which I'm not going to go into because you could probably spend the next hour talking about it. But needless to say, there is now a final strategic plan for autism in the United States.